Washington is reeling from an unprecedented political earthquake, its tremors shaking the very foundations of power. Senator Lindsey Graham, a veteran face of the Republican Party, a man whose political career once seemed as unshakable as the Capitol dome itself, is being pushed to the brink. Allegations of money laundering tied to Ukraine have exploded like a media bombshell, sending shockwaves through the nation's capital and far beyond. The straw that broke the camel's back? A staggering $400,000 hotel bill for just 2 nights. In Kyiv, this outrageous figure has stunned the American public, leaving them aghast at such blatant extravagance. And it has enraged South Carolina voters who feel a profound sense of betrayal by the man they once trusted implicitly, believing he represented their interests in the halls of power. In the eye of this political storm stands Senator John Kennedy, a figure known for his sharp wit and lethal quips. He's playing the role of predator, circling his prey with the precision of a seasoned hunter, ready to expose every one of Graham's meticulously guarded secrets. Meanwhile, the whispers grow louder about Kash Patel, once Trump's shadowy backstage operative, a man whose loyalty to the former president is legendary. Patel is rumored to hold damning evidence, a veritable treasure trove of incriminating information ranging from suspicious transactions hidden in Latvia to secret contracts never before disclosed to the public. With no apparent way out, Lindsey Graham faces a brutal and unforgiving reality. He risks complete expulsion from the political stage, a humiliating end to a decades-long career. He stands to lose both the voter support he once commanded and his standing within his own party, a loyal Republican who now finds himself a pariah. From being a close ally to a former president, he's rapidly transformed into a hunted man, living through every agonizing moment of a fateful political gamble. Before we dive deeper into the labyrinthine story of political intrigue, high stakes, finance, and the potential downfall of a political giant, tell us, where are you watching from? Drop a comment below and let us know. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you won't miss a single beat of the latest, most explosive political stories as they unfold. Make sure to like this video if you're ready to see justice served, and hit that notification bell so you're always in the loop. The Senate hearing room itself is thick with tension, palpable and suffocating, like a political pressure cooker threatening to explode. Polished wooden benches are packed to capacity with senators, their aides, and a throng of eager reporters, all eyes locked on the dramatic scene unfolding before them. The blinding light from dozens of TV camera lenses beams straight at the center of the room, illuminating Lindsey Graham as he sits in the witness chair. His hands are clasped tightly in front of him, knuckles white, a visible sign of his internal struggle. His light blue tie is slightly askew, a minor detail betraying a deeper disarray. His eyes flicker between a calculated calm he desperately tries to project and an undeniable unease that creeps through the facade. Across from him, Senator John Kennedy, with a razor-sharp half-smile playing on his lips, casually flips through a thick stack of documents. He's like a seasoned prosecutor, poised to deliver a fatal blow. Presiding over the hearing, Rand Paul bangs the gavel sharply, 3 dry knocks echoing through the room like a solemn judgment. "We are here to address serious allegations against Senator Graham," he says, his voice deep and cold, as if raising the curtain on a dark and impending drama. "Senator Kennedy, you may begin. The stage is set." The Senate hearing room, still thick with the oppressive tension of a political pressure cooker, felt like a sealed tomb. Polished wooden benches, once merely seating, now seemed to vibrate with the collective anticipation of senators, aides, and reporters, their eyes riveted on the scene unfolding at the center. The blinding beams from dozens of TV camera lenses converged on Lindsey Graham, who sat in the witness chair, a man on the precipice, His hands, still clasped tightly, twitched almost imperceptibly, his light blue tie slightly askew, a minor detail that screamed volumes about the internal chaos he was fighting to suppress. His eyes, in a desperate dance, flickered between a calculated calm he could barely maintain and an undeniable unease that seeped into every pore. Across from him, Senator John Kennedy, with that razor-sharp half-smile that promised both wit and menace, casually flipped through a thick stack of documents. He was no longer just a senator, he was a seasoned prosecutor, poised, predatory, ready to deliver a fatal blow. Presiding over the hearing, Rand Paul banged the gavel sharply, 3 dry, resonant knocks echoing through the cavernous room like a final judgment. "We are here." Paul's voice, deep and cold as a winter night, cut through the silence. "To address serious allegations against Senator Graham." It was as if he was raising the curtain on a dark drama, one that threatened to consume its lead actor whole. "Senator Kennedy, you may begin." Kennedy rose slowly, adjusting his glasses, his gaze, cutting like a surgeon's scalpel, fixed on Graham. "Senator Graham," he began, his southern drawl dripping with a saccharine sarcasm that grated on the nerves. "I hear you're quite fond of Kyiv. Fond enough, perhaps, to spend $800,000 of American taxpayers' money on a few trips? Is that right?" The room buzzed with murmurings, a collective intake of breath. Graham gripped his hands tighter, forcing a strained, almost grotesque smile. "Senator Kennedy," he began, his voice surprisingly steady despite the tremor in his hands. "I visited Ukraine to strengthen alliances and protect America's national security interests against the threat from Russia. That's my duty." Kennedy tilted his head, feigning an innocent puzzlement as if grappling with a riddle. "National security, huh? So why is your hotel bill sky high, like you rented a palace? $400,000 for 2 nights? Were you bathing in French wine?" Chuckles, sharp and derisive, rippled through the press section. Graham's face flushed a deep crimson, but he tried desperately to stay composed. "I don't manage every line item," he replied, his voice slightly higher than usual, betraying his mounting agitation. "Those trips were necessary to negotiate with strategic partners. Costs were approved by the State Department." Kennedy shook his head, a gesture of dismissive disbelief, and held up a stack of papers. "Funny thing is, Senator, I've got an audit report right here showing you personally approved those expenses. No State Department, no one else. Care to explain?" The room fell deathly silent, the quiet so profound you could hear the frantic scratching of a reporter's pen racing across paper. Graham took a deep, shuddering breath, his eyes scanning the other senators for even a flicker of support. But even Dick Blumenthal, a frequent ally, sat stone-faced, unreadable. "I followed procedure," Graham said, his voice starting to waver, a telltale sign of his unraveling. "All expenses were fully reported. If you want to review, I'm happy to provide the documents." Kennedy narrowed his eyes, his voice dropping, taking on the low, guttural tone of a hunter spotting prey. "Documents? Great. But why did you need to visit Ukraine 6 times, while your South Carolina constituents only saw you twice? Your voters are wondering, who does Lindsey Graham represent?" Scattered applause erupted from the public gallery, defiant and loud. Someone shouted, "Go home, Graham!" Chairman Paul banged the gavel, his authority struggling against the rising tide of public discontent, but the noise didn't stop. Graham gripped the table's edge, lips pursed, struggling visibly to contain an outburst. "Senator Kennedy," he said stiffly, his voice tight with barely suppressed fury, "I've dedicated my career to protecting America. Ukraine is the front line against Russian expansion. If we don't support them, we'll pay a much higher price." Kennedy raised an eyebrow, unfazed by Graham's attempt at patriotic deflection. Support senator or business? I hear there are some shady financial dealings tied to Latvia. Former CIA officer Larry Johnson's been talking, saying you might have pocketed a tidy sum from contracts in Ukraine. What do you say to that? The question landed like a ticking time bomb, its faint, ominous hum filling the chamber. The hearing room erupted in whispers, a cacophony of speculation and disbelief. Cameras zoomed in on Graham's face. He opened his mouth, but no words came out immediately. His eyes flashed with a hint of panic before he quickly, almost unnaturally, regained a facade of confidence. "Those are baseless slanders," Graham retorted, his voice high-pitched, almost shouting, desperate to assert control. "Larry Johnson has no evidence, and I challenge him to produce a single document. I'm here to serve the country, not to be insulted by sensationalist opportunists." Kennedy smiled, but it was a smile as cold as ice, a predatory gleam in his eyes. "Is that so? Well, we'll take a closer look. I have a list of wire transfers from USAID, routed through a company in Latvia, and then, oddly enough, they vanish. Care to explain, Senator, before Kash Patel starts digging deeper?" The very mention of Kash Patel's name made Graham freeze. He knew Patel, a political adversary's nightmare, a man with relentless loyalty to Trump, a relentless, tenacious operative. One of Graham's aides, seated in the back, frantically typed on a phone, face pale, as if trying to outrun an invisible threat. Rand Paul interjected, his voice calm but sharp, cutting through the renewed buzz in the room. "Senator Graham, we're not here to rush to judgment, but you need to answer clearly. Who received money from these trips and for what purpose?" Graham took a deep, ragged breath, trying to regain the composure that was rapidly slipping away. "I have nothing to hide," he said, but his voice lacked conviction, a hollow shell of his usual confidence. "Everything I've done is for the benefit of America and its allies. Investigate all you want, but you'll find nothing but my dedication." Kennedy leaned forward, his gaze piercing Graham, a predator closing in for the kill. "Dedication, Senator, or greed? We'll find out, Lindsey. And when we do, the whole country will know whose side you're really on." The room exploded with a cacophony of applause mixed with boos. A Fox News reporter turned to a colleague, whispering, "This will be the hottest headline of the week." In the corner, a man quietly took notes, his eyes sharp, unblinking. It was Kash Patel, watching, preparing to enter the fray. Graham looked around, a chilling realization dawning on him. He was standing on a precipice, the ground crumbling beneath his feet. The hearing had only just begun, but he could already feel his power base disintegrating. Chairman Paul banged the gavel again, calling for a brief recess. Graham stood, walking out of the room with a heavy gait, a man burdened by an invisible weight. While Kennedy exchanged a quick word with Rand Paul, a victorious smile flickering across his face. Outside, the crowd continued chanting, "Investigate Graham! Investigate Graham!" The Senate hearing room door closed, but the pressure cooker was still boiling. As the Senate hearing room door closed after the short, brutal recess, the atmosphere within remained charged, like a pot of water about to boil over. The harsh light from the chandeliers glinted down, cruelly highlighting beads of sweat on Lindsey Graham's forehead. He returned to the witness chair, attempting to adjust his posture, but his hands now gripped the wooden table's edge, as if clinging to a life raft in a storm-tossed sea. Across from him, John Kennedy, eyes sharp as a blade and an almost irresistible mocking smile playing on his lips, flipped to a new page of documents, numbers and text sprawling like a hanging verdict. The packed room hummed with the murmurs of the audience and the incessant scratching of reporters' pens, blending into a tense, unbearable symphony. In the corner, Kash Patel still watched, his pen moving ceaselessly, capturing every damning detail. Graham's composure, once a shield, was now a fragile facade. The public spectacle, Kennedy's relentless accusations and the chilling mention of Kash Patel had cracked it wide open. Later that night, alone in his dimly lit office at the Capitol, the glow of his phone illuminating his weary, haunted face, Graham received a message that made him freeze. Patel's been tasked by Trump to investigate. They're targeting the Latvia. Accounts! The words hit him like a physical blow. He hurled the phone onto the desk, the sharp crack echoing in the silence. His hands trembled uncontrollably. He knew Patel was a formidable opponent, a relentless bloodhound with an uncanny knack for uncovering secrets, especially those he'd tried so desperately to bury. Graham stumbled to the window, staring out at the impenetrable darkness enveloping the Capitol. "They don't understand," he muttered, his voice thick with bitterness, a man utterly alone. "I did it all for this country." But deep down, he felt the invisible noose tightening, cinching around his neck. He dialed a familiar number, a long-time Senate ally, his voice hushed, desperate. "They're getting close," he whispered. "We need to stop Patel, find a way to apply pressure, whatever it takes." Thousands of miles away, under the warm, almost surreal golden glow of the Oval Office, the air felt heavy, charged like a battlefield. Just before the clash, President Donald Trump sat behind the resolute desk, hands clasped, his sharp gaze sweeping the room. Before him stood Kash Patel, erect in a fitted black suit, his face impassive, though he knew this moment, this directive, could define his entire career. The heavy wooden door was shut, sealing them in, leaving only the steady, ominous ticking of a wall clock, like the pulse of a timed bomb. Outside, Washington remained abuzz, a swarm of social media posts and news reports continuing to tear into Lindsey Graham, from the exorbitant hotel bill to the insidious Latvia suspicions. Trump leaned forward, his voice low and firm, a commander giving orders. "Kash," he began, his tone brooking no argument. "You see that mess out there? Graham's making us look like fools. I need the truth, and I need it fast." Patel nodded, his gaze fixed on Trump, unblinking. "I understand, Mr. President. Graham's hiding something, and I'll find it." Trump slapped the desk lightly, a gesture of authority, a subtle tremor running through the solid wood. "Not just find it, Kash. Expose it. If he's playing dirty with Ukraine, I want it laid bare for the whole. Oh, country, no mercy." Patel took a deep breath, feeling the immense weight of the task settling on his shoulders. He had faced formidable adversaries before at the National Security Council, from cunning intelligence officials to shadowy foreign operatives. But investigating a veteran senator, a once respected figure like Graham, was an entirely different beast. "I'll need full access to financial records and a trusted team," Patel said, his voice calm but resolute, conveying an unwavering determination. Trump smirked, his familiar half-smile playing on his lips. "You'll have it all. I've ordered the Justice Department to clear the way, but be careful, Kash. Graham has friends everywhere, and they won't let you dig easily." Patel nodded, unfazed. He was used to political battles, where enemies lurked not just across the aisle, but sometimes even within his own ranks. "I've dealt with guys like that before, Mr. President." He won't slip away. Trump stood, walking to the window, looking out at the manicured White House lawn, his back to Patel. "You know, I used to think Graham was one of us. But if he's betrayed the America First movement, I won't forgive him. Did you hear what Larry Johnson's saying? Money from Ukraine laundered through Latvia, straight into Graham's pocket. If that's true, I want him to pay." Patel nodded, absorbing every word. Larry Johnson, the former CIA officer, had dropped a public bombshell, alleging Graham profited from shady deals. Patel knew Johnson wasn't the type to spread baseless rumors. "I'll start with Johnson," Patel stated, his mind already racing. "He's got sources in Ukraine. If there's documentation, I'll get it." Trump turned back, his eyes glinting with cold resolve. "Good, but don't just rely on Johnson. Dig into USAID, check every expenditure tied to Graham, and if he tries to block, you report to me immediately. Patel gave a rare, faint smile, a hint of steel beneath his calm exterior. He won't get the chance to block me, Mr. President. I learned how to handle guys like him from you. Trump burst into laughter, the sound echoing in the opulent room. That's the Kash Patel I know. Go and bring me a win. As Patel left the Oval Office, adrenaline surged through him. He strode quickly through the White House corridor, his phone buzzing with a message from an aide. Teams ready. Office at Justice is set up. Patel texted back curtly, focus on USAID and Latvia. Start now. In another corner of Washington, in a dimly lit temporary office at the Justice Department, Patel's team of 3 was already waiting. Sarah, the sharp financial expert, Shadow, the wiry data hacker with thick glasses, and Mike, a former CIA operative who had worked with Larry Johnson. Patel set a file on the table, his voice sharp as steel. We have 48 hours to find the first piece of evidence. Start with the $800,000 bill and USAID transactions. If Graham's laundering money, I want the trail. Sarah raised her hand, her expression focused. I've done a preliminary check. USAID has a program for Ukraine, but some expenditures don't match official reports. There are signs of funds funneled through shell companies in Latvia. Patel nodded, his eyes lighting up with a hunter's. Glint, good. Shadow, can you breach Baltic Ventures' system? Shadow, a smug smirk on his face, replied, give me 24 hours. If they've got servers in Europe, I'll find them. Patel turned to Mike. Get in touch with Johnson. I need to meet him to get details on his Ukraine source. If we have a witness, Graham won't be able to deny it. Mike nodded, standing immediately. I'll arrange it. Johnson says he has a document from Kyiv, but he wants assurances of safety before handing it over. Patel scanned the room, sensing the team's growing determination. We're not just investigating Graham, he said, his voice low but powerful. We're defending the America First movement. If he's betrayed it, we'll make him pay. The office door closed, sealing them in. The quiet war had begun in Washington's shadows. 2 men, Patel and Graham, bracing for an unrelenting showdown where only one could emerge standing. The small Justice Department office, once an anonymous corner of federal bureaucracy, had become the epicenter of a quiet storm. Kash Patel stood in the middle, arms crossed, his sharp gaze sweeping over each team member. The table was no longer merely a surface. It was a battleground, cluttered with stacks of documents, printed emails, and intricate financial charts, a dizzying maze of information that held the key to Graham's downfall. Sarah, the financial expert, typed rapidly on her laptop, her face tense, a bead of sweat tracing a path down her temple as she meticulously traced USAID's convoluted money trail. Shadow, the data hacker, sat hunched in his corner, earbuds firmly in place, his fingers flying across the keyboard like a concert pianist possessed, navigating unseen digital labyrinths. Mike, the former CIA operative, just back from a clandestine meeting with Larry Johnson, held a small USB drive, his eyes brimming with a grim resolve. Outside, Washington was cloaked in the deceptive darkness of night, but in this room, time seemed to stand still, compressed by the urgency of their mission. Patel broke the silence, his voice calm, but carrying the chilling weight of someone who tolerated no failure. Sarah, what have you got from USAID? Sarah pushed up her glasses, her tone confident, yet tinged with the barely suppressed excitement of a gold prospector striking a vein. I traced expenditures from last year's Ukraine aid program. 3 large transactions totaling $1.2 million were routed through a company called Baltic Ventures in Latvia. But here's the kicker. Baltic Ventures has no real operations. It's a shell company, a phantom, funneling money to an account in the Cayman Islands. And that account, Mr. Patel, Links directly to a fund in South Carolina registered to someone. Very close to Graham. Patel's frown deepened, a silent command for more. He stepped closer to Sarah's screen. Someone close? Who? Sarah scrolled the mouse, opening a PDF file with a flourish. A guy named Charles Hargrove, Graham's former campaign manager. The funds were listed as a charity, but there's no specific activity reported for the past 2 years. Just a black hole. Patel nodded slowly, his eyes gleaming like a hunter catching a scent. Good. Shadow, what have you got from Baltic Ventures servers? Shadow pulled off his earbuds, swiveling his chair, a smug, triumphant look on his face. I'm in their servers in Riga. Weaker security than I expected. There's a chain of emails between Baltic Ventures and a Ukrainian official mentioning service fees for an unclear project. One email explicitly references LG and a $200,000 payment. I'm recovering more deleted files as we speak. Patel turned to Mike, whose expression had tightened. What did Johnson say? Does he have anything concrete? Mike set the small USB drive on the table, his voice steady but laced with a quiet gravity. Johnson met a source in Kyiv, a former banker who worked with Baltic Ventures. The source has a copy of a contract listing Graham as a strategic consultant for an aid project. The contract's worth $500,000, with no details on actual work. Johnson wants us to protect the source before going public. They're scared. We need to meet this source. Patel rubbed his chin, his mind working at lightning speed. Mike, set up a secure video call. I want to hear from them directly. While Patel's team picked up the blistering pace in a posh Georgetown restaurant, Lindsey Graham sat across from his longtime ally, Senator Dick Blumenthal. The flickering candlelight on their table offered no solace, failing to ease the tension etched into Graham's face. He took a sip of wine, but the glass trembled slightly in his hand. They're coming for me, Dick, Graham whispered, his voice barely above a breath, frayed at the edges. Patel's not the type to quit. If he finds anything, I'm done. Blumenthal frowned, his tone gentle but laced with a cautionary note. Lindsey, if you're clean, you've got nothing to fear. But if there's something, you need to handle it before. Patel digs it up. He's got Trump behind him, and you know Trump doesn't forgive anyone who embarrasses him. Graham let out a dry, bitter laugh, his eyes darkening, shadowed by a grim realization. I haven't done anything wrong. That money was for Ukraine support, not me. But they'll twist everything, just like they did at the hearing. Blumenthal leaned in, his voice sharper now, cutting through Graham's self-pity. Then why did you personally approve those trips? Why not let the State Department handle it? You've made everything look too shady, Lindsey. Graham fell silent, his gaze averted. He knew Blumenthal was right, but the truth was far more complicated than he could ever admit. The Ukraine trips weren't just about diplomacy. They were a way to maintain influence, and perhaps a small, insidious part was for personal gain. But he couldn't say that. Not now. Meanwhile, back at the Justice Department office, Shadow suddenly shouted, breaking the intense focus. I've got it. He swiveled his screen, displaying a deleted but now recovered email. This is from Baltic Ventures to a Ukrainian official, requesting a $300,000 transfer for consulting services by LG. The send date matches Graham's 4th trip to Kyiv. Patel leaned in, reading each line carefully. The email mentioned a regional security project, but lacked specifics. This is our first piece of evidence, Patel said, his voice excited yet restrained, the thrill of the chase evident in his eyes. Sarah, cross-check these dates with USAID disbursements. If they align, we can force Graham to explain. Sarah nodded, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Found it. A $300,000 USAID payment went to Baltic Ventures on the exact same day. It's listed as humanitarian aid, but there's no proof the money was used for that. Patel turned to Mike. Contact Johnson's source now. I need to know who's behind this contract and why Graham's named." Mike nodded, but his eyes betrayed concern. "Kash, the source is scared. They say someone in Kyiv is watching them. If we push harder, they could be in danger." Patel paused, weighing the immense risks. He knew this investigation wasn't just about Graham. It involved a complex, dangerous web stretching from Washington to Kyiv. "We'll protect them," he said, his voice firm, unwavering. "But we can't stop. If Graham's laundering money, the country needs to know." At that very moment, thousands of miles away in Kyiv, a man in a black coat entered a small cafe, his eyes discreetly scanning the room. He was Larry Johnson's source, a former banker intimately tied to Baltic Ventures. His hand gripped an envelope of documents, but his heart pounded as he noticed a strange figure, unmoving and watchful, observing him from a distance. He sent a quick message to Johnson. "I have the contract, but I need safety. They know I'm talking." Thousands of miles away, Patel got the message from Mike about the Kyiv situation. He stood, walking to the window, gazing at Washington's streets, now aglow with a million scattered lights. "We're on the right track," he told the team, his voice hard as steel. "But Graham won't sit still. Prepare for a counterattack. He'll do anything to stop us." He hung up, his gaze sweeping the quiet streets where the capital's lights still burned bright. This fight, he knew, wasn't just about Graham. It was about the truth, and Kash Patel had no intention of stopping. The Senate chamber door swung open, a blinding shaft of hallway light slicing through the internal darkness like a blade. The air inside was heavy, stifling, as if the room itself was holding its breath before an inevitable explosion. Senators sat upright, rigid with anticipation, eyes locked on Lindsey Graham, who entered with a weary gait. His grey suit was rumpled, his eyes bloodshot, betraying days, perhaps weeks, without true sleep. Across from him, John Kennedy, his face cold but brimming with unbridled confidence, organized a new stack of documents, the day's lethal ammunition, delivered by Kash Patel just that morning. TV cameras from CNN, Fox News, and independent outlets zeroed in on Graham, their lenses like predatory eyes, while spectators in the public gallery whispered amongst themselves, some live streaming on their phones, eager to capture every moment of the political blood sport. Outside, the raw, defiant chants of "Justice for South Carolina" echoed from a protesting crowd, a harsh counterpoint to the hushed tension within. Chairman Rand Paul banged the gavel, his voice ringing like a bell, solemn and unyielding. "The second hearing begins. We're here to review new evidence regarding Senator Graham. Senator Kennedy, you may start." Kennedy stood slowly, deliberately removing his glasses, his gaze locking onto his prey like a hunter on the final approach. "Senator Graham," he began, his voice low but razor-sharp, cutting through the silence. "I have a report from an independent investigation led by Kash Patel. It shows $500,000 from a Latvian company, Baltic Ventures, transferred to a South Carolina. One tied to someone close to you? Care to explain, Senator, before we dig deeper?" Graham took a deep, shuddering breath, his hands gripping the witness chair, nails digging into the leather upholstery, an anchor in a rising tide of panic. "I've said it before," he replied, his voice straining to sound calm, but his eyes darting frantically gave him away. "These allegations are fabricated. I know nothing about those transactions. If they exist, they're not connected to me." Kennedy smiled then, a chilling grin that made the audience shudder, a silent promise of what was to come. "Not connected? Then why does an email from your own aide sent directly to Baltic Ventures explicitly request expedited payment for LG's services? And don't tell me LG is anyone other than Lindsey Graham." The room erupted in murmurs, a wave of shock and outrage. A Washington Post reporter scribbled furiously, her pen racing across paper. while a spectator in the gallery, emboldened by the moment, shouted, "Tell the truth, Graham!" Rand Paul banged the gavel repeatedly, desperately trying to restore order, but the noise only grew, fueled by the sheer audacity of the revelation. Graham's composure, already paper-thin, snapped. He shot to his feet, his chair scraping loudly, violently, against the polished wooden floor. "Enough!" he roared, pointing a trembling finger at Kennedy. "You have no right to accuse me like this. I've served this country for decades while you just sit there slinging slanders to play to the crowd." The room exploded, a cacophony of boos from the public gallery mixing with applause from some of Kennedy's supporters. A Breitbart reporter zoomed in on Graham's flushed, contorted face, while another whispered to a colleague, "He just dug his own grave." Rand Paul banged the gavel repeatedly, his face grim, trying to restore order. "Senator Graham, sit down and answer the question," he snapped, his voice sharp. But Graham seemed deaf to it, consumed by a raging panic. He kept pointing, his voice trembling with anger and raw fear. "You people don't understand. Ukraine is our battlefield against Russia. If I wasn't there, who would be? Trump? He hasn't even met Zelensky." Graham's words poured gasoline on an already raging fire. A Democratic senator, Elizabeth Warren, raised an eyebrow, whispering to an aide, "Did he just throw shade at Trump?" Kennedy, seizing the moment with a triumphant smile, pressed his advantage. "So you admit President Trump wasn't involved in your trips? Then who gave you the authority to negotiate with Ukraine on your own, Senator? Does that violate the Logan Act?" Graham froze, as if suddenly realizing he had misspoken, that his desperate outburst had only tightened the noose. He sat down slowly, heavily, his hands trembling visibly on the table. "I didn't violate any laws," he mumbled, but his voice lacked any life, any conviction. "I just did what was necessary." Kennedy shook his head, his tone softening, almost pitying, yet still laced with venom. "Necessary, Senator, or profitable? We'll find out, Lindsey, and when Kash Patel finishes his investigation, I hope you've got better answers." The room buzzed with noise again, a group of spectators chanting loudly, relentlessly, "Investigate Graham! Investigate Graham!" Cameras panned to Patel, still sitting silently in the corner, his gaze cold, impassive, like a hunter biding his time. Graham bowed his head, his hands covering his face, as if trying to hide from the world's scrutinizing gaze. Chairman Paul called for a pause in the hearing, but no one left their seats. Reporters scrambled to capture Graham's utter collapse, while social media lit up with posts, "Graham loses it." "Is he hiding guilt?" A viral meme exploded, showing Graham in front of a giant hotel bill captioned, "America pays, Graham profits." As Graham exited the room, his steps heavy, the weight of the world seemingly on his shoulders, he knew he was being backed into a corner, with nowhere left to run. Kennedy, still seated, exchanged a quick word with an aide, his eyes glinting with grim determination. In the corner, Patel quietly closed his notebook, stood and left, a clear, unyielding plan etched in his mind. The fight was far from over. The dramatic revelations of this story, pulled from the shadows of Washington's power struggles, unveil a saga of alleged corruption, betrayal, and the relentless pursuit of truth. From the hallowed halls of the Senate to the clandestine operations of a dedicated team, the stakes couldn't be higher. Will Lindsey Graham survive this political earthquake? Will Kash Patel's investigation truly lay bare the secrets he's fought so hard to bury? Stay tuned as the full story unfolds, revealing the answers to these explosive questions. If you were gripped by this chapter, please like this video, share it with your friends, and comment below with your thoughts on Graham's fate. And for more in-depth analyses of the political battles shaping our world, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update.